It's so simple and funny. How do you ask for permission first?
Mm.
That's not a term I'd ever heard before. If you think you know what you need, someone said we've got to put a charter together, and you sit down across from that person and say, hey, there's this gap that's come up. We think we're going to work on it. Tell me about what you think, about this. They tell you a little bit about it. Hopefully they say, yeah, this has been an issue. Hey, do I have your permission to go work on that?
Right.
That thought had never crossed my mind before, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And once they say, yeah, I think that'd be great, it really helps to buy in down the road.
Oh yeah, for sure. When it comes to, like, let's imagine that we've completed the charter
Mhm.
and now we've kicked off the project
Mhm.
and we're on our way. What are the behaviors that we should see from an executive sponsor? And is it my responsibility as the project manager to actually like initiate those behaviors or kind of like pull them along? Like, what should the behaviors look like on the executive
Yeah,
side, I
yeah.
guess?
I think what good looks like comes from two different sides.
Okay.
And so, one, as the project owner, what kind of simple review and response system have you set up
Mm,
with the sponsors? So, when I say review and response, think of daily management, even for a project. How do I not wait for a monthly review
mhm.
to get feedback from the sponsor for him or her to say, you guys are off track? How do I do that bi-weekly or weekly
There you go.
or 3 times a week,
Yeah.
whatever the right cadence is?
Yeah.
Some of the best examples I've seen in my career so far have been multiple times a week check-ins with
Mm,
those executives. Now, the higher the level, the harder it is to get time with them.
sure.
But the closer you can get to that more real time, just in time, one piece flow of feedback
Yeah.
to your sponsor, the better off you're going to be.
Right. So, what would be like, what would cause a project to not move forward or to not be successful? And how could executive leaders be valuable in helping that not happen? Right.
And they go off track lots of ways.
Hmm.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you have that regular, consistent check in points, you're less likely to have a project go off track. Typically, where they do go off track, um, the key reasons are, again, misalignment.
Sure.
Or if you think about the problem solving cycle, PDCA, not
Hmm.
enough or the correct follow up.
Mm,
Doing the work up front's the easy part. Getting a project up and running
right.
is the easy part.
Right.
Is it delivering what you or what they think it's going to deliver? And how do we talk about that?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And if you're talking about it regularly, you should, and to your point, like those shorter cycles. So if it's
Mm-hmm.
twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to catch lags or roadblocks and
Mm-hmm.
have those conversations, and then you know be hopefully you have a solution to how you're going to get through that roadblock and the
Mm-hmm.
problem. But if you don't, having those regular discussions is that opportunity to say, hey, I have a roadblock. If this is not removed, which is outside of my control, I
Right.
can't do this.
Right.
Then I'm stalled. I'm stuck.
Right.
So can you help me
Right.
with that? Those
Right.
regular discussions. I've been in too many organizations where they don't have those regular discussions, and then they get to like the end of the month or the end of the quarter, and then the executive's like, "Okay, give me an update on this project," and they're kind of scrambling, going
Yeah.
around in circles, like because they don't have
Yeah.
a good report on the
Yeah.
movement towards completing that particular
Yeah.
project,
Yeah.
right?
Sometimes we need to eat our own dog food, as they say. If you're running a production process or a transactional process, you're checking in on that regularly. We have hour by hour boards if you're in the manufacturing world.
Hmm.
Daily huddles a lot of times if you're in the transactional world,
Hmm.
to do exactly that, early escalations of issues. And I don't know why sometimes in the project management world we don't have that same thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it just goes back to, and it doesn't have to be a long meeting,
Sure.
right? It's just a touch point
Yeah.
where you have a regular scheduled cadence of meetings on this particular project where you're pulling the team together
Yeah.
and you're just doing a quick touch point on
Yeah.
how things are progressing and what help is needed.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. One of my better examples, I was working with one of our plants outside Cincinnati, and the global director of the flavors BU was the executive sponsor.
Okay.
And so, as part of our Nemawashi, our pre work,
Yep.
I said, how often can we check in? We're going to be on site every week for a while. Uh, um, what is fair? How
Hmm.
much time do you think you can give us? And he said, well, I'd love to do a startup check-in when you get here Monday and a closeout check-in before you leave on Friday.
Nice.
I said, this is perfect.
Yeah.
How much time can you give me? He said 10 minutes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
You can convey escalations or wins in a really short amount of time, especially when you're working with those executives. They don't want a 3-page report.
Right.
They want a red and a green. They
Yeah.
want a 1-pager.
Yeah, on track or off track.
On track or
Very
off
simple.
track, yeah.
And what help do you need?
Yep.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. You have to know your audience and speak their language, right? So understand who you're speaking to and what's important to them, and be sure that
That's
you're
right.
presenting that accordingly. As the project manager, it's your job to make sure that the systems are set
That's right.
up to support your project's completion and that it's moving along and that you're able to achieve that. And then it's the executive's responsibility to show up, listen,
Yeah.
and look for opportunities to
Yeah.
help support. Again, whether that's removing roadblocks or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But even just showing up,
Yeah.
being there, listening, asking some questions
Yeah.
can be super valuable for a project team.
And so I mentioned there's two ends that I try to tackle. One is review and response, daily management for projects.
Mhm.
The other, I think a lot of times those executives don't know how to build that into their own day.
Mm,
So one version is me being proactive. How do we get them to be proactive to come to you and ask?
right.
So if you have leader standard work for an executive, that's
Mhm.
great. When you're launching a project, say, hey, every week can you put this on your leader standard work to go ask somebody a question about the project? It doesn't matter what the question is.
Mm,
It gets them talking.
that's right. That's
Stuff
right.
comes up when you start talking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
so
leader,
important.
yeah. So leader standard work, or even just a calendar, a note or an appointment once a week or twice a week. Go ask somebody.
That's a good call out for sure. How do you make sure that you don't become too over dependent on the executive sponsor or leadership to the point where I'm not moving forward to make decisions because I'm waiting on that next meeting with my executive sponsor to get approval to move ahead? How do we? I guess I'm just looking for a balance of,
Yeah.
like, how do we not get too far down the weeds of kind of almost in the
Hmm.
place of micromanaging,
Hmm.
where an executive, you're relying on them to make all the
Yeah.
decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of thoughts. Short interval check-ins. We already covered that. That
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
I think knowing the relationship um, will help as well. Does that executive allow you to run experiments on your own? And so
Mhm.
maybe this is a discussion you have too, even pre-charter or during the charter, to say, here's our gap, here's the direction we're going. Are you okay if I play a little bit in here?
Mm,
And if they say yes, that's a green light to maybe not need as much approval
sure.
or feedback. If they seem hesitant, I don't know. Then as the project leader, I know maybe I need to decide what to run past the executive.
Okay.
So I think knowing that relationship, knowing their comfort level
Right.
with autonomy is
Mhm.
super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to meeting them where they are too,
Yeah.
and understanding who your audience is, right? So, what about on the other side of that? What if you have an executive leader that's like fully removed, or they're showing up to the meeting, or you're showing up to their office, but they're clearly not interested,
Yeah.
and maybe they're not showing up to meetings, or they're canceling, or whatever it might be. I mean, any advice to people on how to deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at first you have to ask the question, do they trust that I'm doing the right thing? And is it okay
Mm,
that they've maybe taken a step back? It's probably more rare
yeah.
than
Right.
the other side, which is they're just not that engaged with what you're doing.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd go back to my question in the beginning. are you working on something that's important to that executive and to the business?
Right. Right.
I would guess not if they're really that removed.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's a discussion, hey, Patrick, we launched this initiative. We got a lot of people working on it. It doesn't seem to have your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that. Is it
Mm-hmm.
not something that's strategic? Is it not something that we should be working on now? Or maybe they just don't understand it well enough to ask.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that almost makes me think you have to understand, your culture makes a big difference here too, because if you're living in a fear-based culture where
Mm-hmm.
psychological safety doesn't exist and you're worried or scared about saying, I mean,
Yeah.
that can be a tough
Yeah.
conversation to have with an executive leader, someone that you
Yeah.
report to say, hey, I'm not getting the involvement that I really
Yeah.
need here. What's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough, so
It is. Yeah.
you're going to have to gauge your culture there, right? I mean, I hate to say it, but there's probably some people listening that are like, there's no way I could have that conversation with my boss.
So think about other peers. That leader, that executive has peers
Mm-hmm.
that maybe have a different leadership style.
Okay.
Could you talk to them
Sure.
about, hey, I'm working on this for Patrick. Do you think this is important at your guys' level? So, maybe not directly at first.
Yeah.
Feel out some of those other leaders in the org.
That's a good call out. Yeah. Obviously, if you have trust with certain people that you can kind of bounce ideas and get some advice from, but at the end of the day, you got to figure out how to get support on your project to move it forward. And if you're not getting that, it needs to be addressed either, with that person or, I mean, you got to figure it out because you need you need that support. There's a reason why their name's on that chart.
Right. Yeah. And I would encourage everybody, think about how do you do more work on the front end.
Sure.
Because by the time you're already thinking about, I don't have the buy-in I need, you're in a hole. So how do you do that front end different than Nemawashi, the tilling the soil before you plant?
Yeah.
Those informal discussions, even before the charter.
Wow.
That time before the charter, I don't think we spent enough time thinking about.
That's a really good point. There's a lot of leg work. There's a lot of work that can be done ahead of time to set yourself up for success. So that's a really good point. What would you say is the most important thing that anyone that's listening right now that's been assigned a project? It's the beginning of the year. I'm sure there's lots of brand new projects that are getting kicked off here. What would you say would be the number one most important thing that someone who is managing a project should consider in order to ensure that they're going to have project success, completion success?
I think building in those touch points with whomever, whether it's the executive sponsor or the owner, deliberately building in the touch points and deliberately helping them build in proactive time in their day to make touch points with you.
Okay. Yeah.
I just think any gap in communication, any gap in status updates, it's gonna sink a project.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, like having those intentional touch points, but even being structured in those, even like your initial touch point, and think about this, like before you even are working on the charter, but how do I get my executive sponsors buy-in? So what does that first conversation need to look like? As far as the project goes, how do I present this project in a way that makes it very valuable to that leader? And go ahead.
I learned a great tool from Ed Blackman. I think Ed Edward
Amway.
Yeah. And it's so simple and funny. How do you ask for permission first? That's not a term I'd ever heard before, and this is part of that time before the charter, where you sit down with an executive. You think you know what you need. Someone said we've got to put a charter together, and you sit down across from that person and say, hey, there's this gap that's come up. We think we're going to work on it. Tell me about what you think about this. They tell you a little bit about it. Hopefully they say, yeah, this has been an issue. Hey, do I have your permission to go work on that?
Right.
Which that thought had never crossed my mind before, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And once they say, yeah, I think that'd be great, it really helps to buy in down the road.
Oh yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. And Edward would also, his Nemawashis were always at a restaurant or a bar or somewhere off site,
Yeah.
a couple of drinks,
Yeah.
or whatever on the golf course.
Yeah.
Just having more of an informal conversation
Yep.
ahead of time to really help yourself get some framework around what you're going to be doing and what's the best way to approach this, right? Even identifying problems you might encounter with support down the road.
That's exactly. And that was the approach we took at that plant I was talking about outside of Cincinnati. We did some of that informal Nemawashi with the VP. Hey, what's going on? What are the problems you need help with, and get them talking. And then along with can we help you with this? And they say, yeah. Who else do we go talk to? Who else would know about this problem? So, the Nemawashi can kind of grow just by asking, all right, who else should we go talk to about this?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a really great point. Unfortunately, we got to come to a close here. We're trying to shorten up our podcast episodes a little bit. So this time went by really fast, unfortunately. We could talk forever, I'm sure. But if anyone who's watching this has more questions just about, project management or executive support, or, even the MLC we talked about, the Michigan Lean Consortium, if they have any questions, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so just look me up there, Dave Kippen. Email is super easy, davekippen@yahoo.com.
Perfect.
I'm old enough to still have a Yahoo email address.
Nice.
Those are the easiest ways.
Okay, perfect. Yep. And we'll throw that in the show notes too. So if anyone's interested, they can go right to the show notes and grab your contact info and reach out to you that way. So, Dave, it's been great to have you on the show. As always, love touching base with you and connecting, and looking forward to see how your career continues into the future. So
same. I've loved watching your path and your progression. I find joy in that. So thank you for that.
All right. Take care.
All right.